Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was probably the most iconic of any game in the Sonic series. This is where series staples would set in and eventually become part of Sonic forever. Sonic started life as just a way for Sega to try and compete with Nintendo and their giant mascots, and evolved to embody everything that Sega was about. Sonic proves that Sega does what Nintendo don't. Where Mario was always cartoony and funny, Sonic was more detailed, and had a star with a bit of an attitude. It was refreshing for the characters and world to be portrayed in this more realistic tone. Sonic went on to spawn an entire series of very different games, and had major influence on the gaming industry of its time. But did its influence stand the test of time? We'll find out today on this episode of Bridging the Gap. We're going to be rating Sonic the Hedgehog 2 with the 5 pillars of a good game. Being difficulty, where we will identify how well balanced the game's difficulty is. Graphics, where we look at how well the art style and in-game recognizability of the graphics hold up. Conveyance, where we will look at how well we know what to do and where to go in the game. Story/progression, where we will see how satisfying it is to progress further in the game. And replayability, where we will see if the game has any lasting value for a second playthrough. Pillar 1. Difficulty. Sonic 2 did difficulty mostly right. It had well thought out levels, and within each level there were several paths that could be taken to the end. Usually the naturally taken path is designed to be the easiest, but there are other paths that have more rewards and are usually more challenging. This makes it so that if a player is more skilled and willing to explore, then they will get more rewards from it. Sonic also rewards you if you know the level layout and the controls really well. If you are able to control Sonic correctly, you can zoom through levels without ever losing your speed. When you mess up, the game punishes you by coming to a grinding halt. This is also good though, because when you mess up, the game resets you to a more manageable speed. There are bad points though, because there are a few jumps scattered throughout the game that are one-way death traps. They are a jump where there is no recovery. I've always hated the insta-kill areas on platformer maps, if the player has no way of knowing it's there. Sonic is just as guilty of this as any other platformer of the day. Platformers have gotten much better with this in more recent times, but this was not made in more recent times. All things considered, I'll leave it with an 8.
It might just be my skill, but the platforming was difficult for me to pull off through the levels. The enemies and traps aren't too bad though. They can be dealt with pretty consistently. Overall, I give it a 7.5.
Pillar 2. Graphics. The art style is iconic, to say the least. The graphics are usually incredibly detailed for the era. This is partly due to the fact that the Genesis uses bigger sprites than competing consoles did. They just had more pixels to work with when making the artwork. And this shows when you play the game. Sonic is incredibly beautiful, but this comes with the offset that everything looks a little busy sometimes. Detail is good, but on some of the textures they seem to have overdone it a little bit. All in all, I give it a 7.
It can be unclear sometimes what is a platform and what is the background, but for the most part everything is pretty clear. The art style is also really good. For that, I'll give it an 8.
Pillar 3. Conveyance. Conveyance is a simple one for Sonic because, like many platformers, the goal is somewhere to the right. This means that you just need to follow a consistent path, generally rightward, to find the end. Sonic does, however, look at ways to make the level design feel fresh when compared to other platformers. They use something that other platformers seem to ignore: the left button. Other platformers use vertical space pretty well sometimes, but none of them seem to like it when the player pushes left. Sonic requires this in several of their levels. It's a refreshing change. That'll be a 7 from me.
The first level is pretty simple. You just go right. For the second level, it gets a bit more confusing because you can be going up, up, down, down, left, right, B, A, start. They add a lot of different directions into the level. With everything considered though, I'd leave it with a 7.
Pillar 4, Story/Progression. Story is the weakest part of the Sonic experience. You don't have super well thought out plots or epic struggles. You have an evil doctor doing evil doctor things. Why does he do them? He's an evil doctor. What else do you need to know? The story's a bit shallow and the progression could be a bit better, but it is satisfying to defeat Robotnik every time. I'll leave it with a 6.
Dr. Robotnik trapped wildlife in cages and has robots and is trying to turn the animals into robots. And Sonic is trying to save him. For some reason, you go from the meadows to a city in a few levels. Everything seems a little jumbled together. With that, I give it a 6.5.
Pillar 5, Replayability. Sonic 2 was an iconic game that needs to be replayed every once in a while just to take in the character that was the Blue Blur. He was everything that Sega was about. Speed? We've got that. Power? To the max. Fun? You know this. This is a game that everyone needs to play at least once in their life. And I don't give that honor to many games. We're going 9 out of 10.
Apart from my skill and the confusing story/progression, it is pretty good. I'll play again in the future. 7 out of 10.
In conclusion, Sonic 2 was in the masterclass of its era. They did things with this game that would go on to influence the whole of gaming as other companies tried to figure out how to compete with yet another giant mascot. Sonic and Sega in general are still doing things today that I think more companies should take note of though. In the beginning of the video, I left the game selection in, so you could see exactly where it came from. Sega released, on Steam, the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis Classics bundle. This has 56 games for about $30. 56 classic 16-bit era games for $30-ish on a modern marketplace with modern customization for controls, video, audio, and the ability to create save states. Sega built a full emulator so you can play their games in the best way that they, and I, think is possible. If you don't like the emulator they provide, that's okay, because when you browse the local files of the collection, you can find the non-compressed ROM files in their own folder, just asking to be dropped into any emulator you do like. Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft need to take note. This is how you do game preservation. It's not perfect, but it goes leagues beyond what everyone else is doing, and proves that all these years later, Sega still does what Nintendo don't, and apparently what Sony and Microsoft don't too. I pick on these companies because Sega showed how to do it right. Well, that's it for this week, everybody. This is Melting Data and Dark Crusader. We'll see you in the YouTube zone.